Hi there loaded 4x4 fans, I'm David Wilson, Managing Editor of the magazine, and I'm here today with the brand new JL Wrangler short wheelbase overland model. This car costs about $60,000. A lot of money. Has it got a lot of fruit? Yes it has, and we'll find out more about that as the day unfolds. I was unlucky enough not to get a serious crack at least, in the Rubicon when we had that a couple of months ago. You would have seen it in issue 9. Cracking car. Editor Steen loved it to bits. In fact, he thought it was probably the best four-wheel drive he's ever driven. So they're pretty lofty bits of praise there. So maybe, just maybe, I might get lucky with this one and it gives me a similar vibe. Let's hope so. So who do you reckon this car's going to appeal to? Well, I reckon there's two demographics. There's the bright young things. So folk between 20 and say 35 who have got a good job, they're cashed up, they're looking for a vehicle that's going to perform that urban cycle really well and get out in the bush every now and again when they crave a camping experience. And then there's older folk approaching my vintage who are getting close to retirement. Maybe they've got a business, and again they're looking for something that's going to work for them around town and give them an opportunity to go bush as well. At $60,000 it'll want to be a pretty good car. It's filled with leather, it's got a good stereo system. I reckon it'll find some buyers. So about time we got out there and found out. You know, if you're a regular reader of Loaded 4x4 magazine, you'll know I'm a devout diesel man. It's almost like a religion to me. Diesels give me great fuel efficiency, they give me good power and power down low in the rev range, so I don't have to work the car too hard to get it to go places. This vehicle is a V6, which I'm not exactly enamored with. It's okay, it gets off the mark really well, and it'll win the traffic light Grand Prix easy. But, you know, we live in really interesting times at the moment, and diesel's on the nose internationally, which is a real shame. And that young girl, Greta Thunberg, said it really precisely. I think that we're living in an era of mass extinction, and I think that's the problem with the auto industry at the moment. Diesels are getting phased out. There's a big push towards EVs, electric vehicles, and poor old Fiat Chrysler is sort of caught in the crosshairs of that war. They'd really like to have an electric vehicle program ready to go, but they haven't. They need to buddy up with a bigger bunch of corporations, perhaps try the Alliance Group again with Renault, Mitsubishi and Nissan, but they are going to have to do some things and very soon, because running a petrol motor like we've got here with stop-start technology to help the fuel efficiency isn't going to cut it in a few years' time when EVs are all the rage and everybody else has got one and they don't. It's a good car, but there's going to be a lot of questions asked about the power plant, and very soon. Now, to help the Petrol Wrangler achieve some degree of decent fuel efficiency, it's got an 8-speed transmission. So that's 8 gears, and that allows the top end of the car to be in overdrive settings, which will pull the engine speed down and it'll use less fuel. So that's a no-brainer. That's been with us for a long time. The car also uses something akin to Mitsubishi's Super Select system that you'll see in the Pajero and the Pajero Sport. So it's both a part-time and full-time four-wheel drive. So if you're running around town, you can be in two-wheel drive on a decent bitumen road or something like that. The next position you go up to is what Jeep call 4 Auto. So it's a constant four-wheel drive mode, a bit like a Subaru if you like. So you've got some power going up to the front wheels, the bulk of it going up to the back, and that gives it tenacious on-road grip on wet bitumen and maybe on a well-made dirt road surface, although I haven't seen too many of those of late. The next position up is the part-time four-wheel drive mode. So this is when things are starting to get a bit serious. So you've got lots of corrugations, maybe a bit of sand or a bit of mud starting to creep into the equation, and that will still allow you to maintain a reasonable clip of speed. I always teach in the classroom a ceiling of about 80 kilometers an hour on the dirt roads, plenty fast enough. And that center diff lock mode in four-wheel drive high range is the one to go for. And lastly, there's the crawler set of gears in low range, and we'll get into that in a little while's time. We'll show you how to engage that. So on the transmission front, it's got a really good system, and I look forward to putting it to the test in just a moment's time. In fact, the road's getting very twisty here. How about we go into the four-wheel drive auto mode right now? So I just pull the transmission lever back, I'm off the gas, back on the gas. I can see by the dash display now, it confirms for me that I've got the constant four-wheel drive mode on and the car is sharp as a tack. Actually, that's not quite true, because at the moment I'm suspecting that we've got a tyre pressure problem here, and I think they're overinflated, so I think I better pull up and have a look at that. So here's a safe little place to pull up and we'll check those tyre pressures. So I'll just get into park. Now I'm going to scroll down on the dash display here. Oh my God, so I've just hit the button for the TPMS and it's telling me the back tyre's currently running 41 PSI and the fronts are 40. No wonder the ride was feeling pretty jiggly, and over a couple of the bigger bumps on the bitumen, it was a big old shimmy, was doing its own little dance. Anyway, I need to fix that. But first we need to find the tyre placard. So, Sonny's tyre pressure reducer, away we go. So I'm going to find the tyre placard on this vehicle, which is on this left-hand passenger door, and see what numbers it suggests that the tyre should be at. And if I have a look in here, oh my God, that's 36 PSI, which I think is way too much for this vehicle. This car weighs about 1,780 kilograms. If I do quick sums in my head, that's about 450 kilos per tyre. If I were to consult with the Tyre and Rim Association manual, a tyre this size, up at this 3640 PSI marker that it's currently at, should be able to carry about 800 kilos. We're only carrying half that. We don't need anywhere near that same sort of air. So I'm going to let them down to 30 because I know from past experience that that's a good pressure to work to. All right, so all the action happens right down here. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this valve cap off. And to hasten the process along, I'm going to use one of ARB's ingenious easy deflators. And essentially what this thing does is you screw it onto the valve stem, pull the valve core out, and quickly it'll reduce the pressures. A word of warning, there are a number of knockoff brands out there. ARB came up with this concept some years ago, but there's a number of knockoff brands out there, and from my experience, they don't work reliably. Like the tyre pressure monitoring system suggested up in the car, that we're up at 40 PSI, which is way too much air. So I'm going to start the process of letting air out now. So by doing this, we get a big rush of air out, close it off, and then I can check it. And there it is. So I'm a much happier boy now at this lower pressure. And now I can remove the deflator from the valve, and that tyre is now ready to go. All right, let's see what this baby says. Oh man, that's better. Got the right numbers now. It's around 30 PSI. I'm a happy boy. This is gonna make that car steer a whole lot better. Well, what a transformation. I've let the tyres down to my magic 30 PSI number, and I know some of you are going to be saying, David, that's too low. But sorry, won't have a bar of it. On both my D-Max and my MUX back home, they weigh a similar amount of weight to this vehicle, up around that 1.8, 2 tonne mark. I've been running 30 PSI on those cars unladen for the last however long I've had them, and my tyre wear is nice and even. But the real benefit, like I've got now, is that this thing is riding like a charm. So no more bump and thump over the imperfections in the bitumen. It's steering like a champ. It's measurably better than what it was at 41 PSI, and dare I say it, probably better than the placarded pressure at 36. So based on this weight, I think this pressure is about right. We made the adjustments to the tyre pressures and we're now at David's magic 30 PSI or around it. And I've just driven down the road a couple hundred metres, and now, as I expected, the tyre pressure management system is carrying on like a bit of a pork chop. It's got a warning light come up on the dashboard, and also to all the pressure indicators come up in red to tell me that there's a problem. So it's good to know that the system works. It's also good to know that it's letting you know if the tyres are going down, but I'd much prefer to have this setting that I'm currently at, because the car's steering a treat and it's nice and comfy. Now I need to tell you, if you're coming to a Wrangler from a passenger car experience, you're probably going to have a little bit of trouble at first with the ride. You see, Wranglers use a traditional way of building a four-wheel drive. They use live axles front and rear. So rather than having independent suspension, we have a front and rear axle that can swing up and down through a big old arc like that. Lots of wheel articulation, which is really, really good when we go off-road. But on-road, they're a bit roly-poly. Live axles are different to the traditional way of building a four-wheel drive where you've got independent front suspension and maybe a live axle rear. The difference between the two, well, very simply this. Live axles going around corners at high speed don't work particularly well. There's a lot of roly-poly motion, and it's been the undoing of plenty of cars in the past. Tip them into a corner too quick and they just want to roll over and play dead. Independent front suspension vehicles are a bit of a compromise. They're better around town, they go around corners nice and flat and firm. But off-road, the suspension travel is limited and they'll cock a wheel up in the air, so they're not as good at off-road. So this one's got all the hallmarks of being a great off-roader, and we're going to put that to the test on the Adventure four-wheel drive track in just a moment. So for your near $60,000, what do you get in the way of safety in this car? Well, it would seem a fair bit, but not enough. You see, this vehicle only has a 1-star ANCAP rating. That's 1 star, not 5. All the other vehicle manufacturers, Jeep included, will be striving for a 5-star rating ordinarily, but new Wrangler only comes with 1. That's pretty dismal in this day and age. Even the Jimny manages 3 stars, and that wasn't very good. So you get hooked off the ABS system, anti-lock brakes, you get stability control, traction control. There's also lane change assist, blind spot monitoring, and rear crossover path recognition at the back there. So there's a fair bit of fruit on it, but it's not enough. And the elephant in the room here is that when these things do crash, there's a lot of footwell deformation and also the risk of chest and head strike up against this big tall dashboard, something that you don't get in a regular passenger car. So boys and girls, I suppose the message is don't crash it and you'll be okay. Something we discovered in issue 9 of Loaded 4x4 magazine when we did the review on the Rubicon is that the driver's footwell space is really, really tiny. And I say thanks to Drew for that, our in-house Jeep nutter, because he's got much bigger feet than I. I've got dainty little size 9 ballet shoes on, but Drew's, I think, running a size 12, and he found the footwell really cramped. And I have to say, I have to agree with him. I'd hate to do hundreds and hundreds of kilometres in this car because there's nowhere to put your left foot, there's no footrest, and you've got to cock your left leg up on a pretty strange angle, and I reckon that's going to get a bit tedious after a while. So I reckon that one could need some addressing, but I don't know how they're going to do it because there's a transmission in the way. I reckon it's about time we went into low range because I can see one of my favourite rocky hills coming up. So to engage low range, I need to shift into neutral. And then what I'm going to do is to take the transmission out of the constant full drive mode, across into the part-time high range mode, and all the way back into low range. Now, I've just seen the symbols come up to confirm that I'm in low range. I'm a happy camper. I can grab drive now, and now I can move off. So now David is a very happy camper. He's in low range, but to help my cause, because I like driving things old school manually, I'm going to put the automatic transmission into the manual mode. Currently I'm in second gear. I like using second gear whenever I'm doing any climbs up steep gradients. It just tends to keep the engine speed in check and allows me to make good progress up the hill without too much wheel spin. So complementing that will be traction control. And if I get any wheel slip, it'll kick in almost immediately and control that unwanted wheel spin. And I got up that little gradient there, piece of cake. Didn't hear any chirp out of the tyres, so there's no wheel spin going on, just plenty of positive grip. And that surprises me because at the moment, don't forget, we're on David's road pressure, so we're at 30 PSI, and we're using a tyre that really is a passenger car tyre. It's not an off-road tyre, it's something designed for the city, yet we came up here quite easily. So well done, Mr. Jeep. Now I've got my steep descent coming up. For this first descent, I'm going to use first gear in low range. So I push the transmission selector forwards and I come off the brake and we're going too fast. So we were doing 5 or 6 kilometers an hour then. If I continue on at that speed, I'm likely to crash down on the undercarriage, maybe even bend a door sill. So I'm just going to ride the brake on this first attempt, pushing on the brake, regulating the speed, and down we come. Suspension's flexing up nicely, I bet, and I'm down and over it. So I had to intervene then because low range in first gear wasn't quite deep enough. It was good, but it needs a bit of help. All right, so let's go up the hill one more time. Now I've come into this section pretty awkwardly and I suspect I'm going to roll smack up against the rock. Yeah, I did. So I'm going to increase the engine speed now and see if I can drive up and over it. Okay, so we've got some wheel spin. So the right hand rear, left hand front were just slipping a bit, and now traction control's job is to arrest that spinning wheel and to get us up and over. And hey, that worked really, really well. It came in right from the get-go. So many vehicles I drive today, you've got to get the engine speed right up to get traction control to intervene. And when you get up around 2,500 revs, there's just too much energy going through those wheels, and you run the risk of breaking a CV joint or leaping out of a hole and crashing down on something else and bending a door sill or whatever it might be. So for the Jeep system to come in that quickly, that was a real treat. So I've just engaged the hill descent control and I've come to a complete standstill. Man, this thing engages really sharply. Currently, it feels like it's set at about 1 or 2 kilometers an hour. So that's very, very slow, but that's good because it means I can concentrate on the trail rather than worrying too much about the rate of descent. So here we come. Okay, right hand front wheel's about to go over the big old step. You can just hear the brakes just chiming in the background. Brr, brr. Kicked a wheel up in the air. I bet the suspension's doing a nice old articulation at the moment, but my foot is nowhere near the brake at the moment. So we're just rolling over this at a snail's pace and the car had it all under control. That was great. Very good. So 10 out of 10 on that one, Mr. G. So let's find out how good this suspension is. Remember, it's got live axles front and rear, coil springs on each corner, lots of flex, but I reckon we might stretch it to the limit and then a bit more. So a couple of little bursts of acceleration, get traction control to kick in. I felt it bounce up and down, but we're up and over. So that was pretty commendable. We'll have another go at that. We'll do it the other way. Watch that suspension flex. So the left-hand front wheel is off the ground at the moment. Touch down, right-hand front falls into the hole. That kicks the back one up in the air. So traction control in this works a treat. It's fantastic. Purely in the interest of science, I need to find out what the turning circle is like in this vehicle in low range. So here we go. Circle work is always good for finding that out. Yahoo! Although you probably shouldn't do this at home. It was done by a professional stunt driver in a location that wasn't harmful to the environment. This thing rocks in sand. Lightweight and a very punchy motor add up to heaps of fun in the sand. So after a bit of frivolity like that, there's another party trick that the Jeep's got, and that is that you can actually take these panels out of the roof, and that's what I'm going to do right now. And look, just like that, we see daylight. Hey, that's better. It's a bit like driving an open-top sports car. Let's go. See, one of the good things in having the roof off is that you can have conversations with people upstairs. How are you going? So I'm going to make my way up here. I've got a couple of erosion gullies to negotiate. Bit of lumpy bumpy up and down, and then we're going to tackle the big sand hill. We call it the sand hill. Here we go. All right, so the first obstacle I have is this big old diagonal gully. Now, if I'm not careful, I could conceivably tip the car over. So I've just kind of come into this really gently. Now I'm anticipating my left-hand front wheel is probably a mile off the ground just then. But hey, the Jeep made that look pretty bloody easy. So good combination of suspension articulation and good traction control made that look real easy. So just come up through this cutting up through here. Now this is looking a little serious. It's amazing how a week's worth of moisture can really change the complexion of a track space. Up and over, that was good. Over this, down we come. Bit bumpy lumpy, all's good. All right, back we come. So at Adventure 4 Drive HQ up here in the Barossa Valley, we've got predominantly a sandy base, but we've got lots of clay, and where the creeks run through here, they leave these massive erosion gullies, just like this one I'm dropping into now. So we've got a big old diagonal flex up going now. In fact, that right-hand rear wheel is miles off the ground. But luckily, because we've got the live axles, we've got plenty of suspension flex, and you felt it touch down then. So that was pretty impressive. I reckon that back wheel was easily 1/2 metre off the ground. Now, fortunately, because we were rolling forward, I didn't have any issues with grip because momentum was just carrying the vehicle down the hill. But going back the other way, which I'm going to do now, could be a different story. So we'll see if we can tickle the traction control into some sort of effective use. Turning circle on this is really, really good. In low range, full drives usually aren't very, very good going around circles, doing a U-turn. But this one, probably because it's a short wheelbase model, gets around corners pretty snugly. Left-hand front wheel's up in the air for a second there, got a little bit of tickle out of traction control, but it walked through effortlessly. So well done, Mr. Jeep, that was really commendable. It's the business end of the day when David's got to summarise his feelings about this vehicle. Oh, look at that, it's a bench to sit on. You know, I've been worried about this front bumper all day today, whether it had touched down, because the Rubicon did. The approach angle on that vehicle seemed to be a bit different to this one. Maybe it's a combination of the short wheelbase and the, I don't know, better position it's putting its wheels in that's got it through today. So the question I'm going to ask myself is, would I put one of these in my garage? And I have to be honest here, the answer is no. It's a short wheelbase model, so that won't suit my purposes because I've got to carry people and a whole bunch of baggage and tow with it. So I'd go the long wheelbase model. I'd get the Rubicon. I'd stump up the extra $10,000 and buy into that. Or if I just wanted a round town runabout, I'd get the Jimny. This vehicle has surprised me in plenty of ways. Around town, I wasn't that enamored with it. Off-road, it's shone. It's really, really good. It's got great traction control. It's got good credentials off-road. And I have no doubt that if you wanted to make it even more capable, you could bring it up to Rubicon spec by going down to ARB and asking them about one of their air lockers, and that would help the cause, although traction control's been really good today. I hope Jeep sell a lot of these because I think their fortune really rests on this new JL model, and I'd hate to see the Jeep brand just be consigned to the scrap heap of history. I hope they can find a suitor, a bigger company to take them on board and keep them afloat for another decade, 20, 50 years, however long they've been about, because it's not a bad car and it's certainly deserving of a place off-road. So thanks for watching this first review of the Jeep JL Wrangler, the Overland short wheelbase. It's been a hoot. Now, there's going to be a whole lot more videos come up on our YouTube channel in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. But don't forget the magazine. You need to subscribe to it. So go to the web address, www.loaded4x4.com.au, find the subscription page, put your email address in there, and we'll send it into your inbox every other month. It's a great read. I'm sure you'll love it. Thanks for watching. See you soon.